Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strong Style here on the Outlaw Nation Network. I'm excited to talk about today's match, today's revisit of a classic match with my boy down there in Orlando, one of my favorite people to talk professional wrestling with, and you know him as the co-host of this show. That's my man, Aaron Turner. How are you, brother?
Good, man. Hey, I heard something. I heard you were a wild one. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, a little Flow Rider in there. Got to get him in the
Flow
show because he
Rider.
was
And
he was
speak,
all over WrestleMania. That one it is.
Yeah, that's WrestleMania 27. That's right. Flow Rider there in Miami, the home of The Rock. By the way, I'm the Outlaw John Rocha. I guess I didn't introduce myself right off the bat, but I assume
Probably
people know
important.
that if they're tuning into this. But if you didn't, there now you know. I can't believe you still have a cup from that time. That's incredible. Look at that thing. WrestleMania
That's right.
27.
Once in a lifetime, indeed. I didn't go, but my friend Nick
Uh-huh.
got this for me when he went, so I appreciate it. I didn't live here at the time, or I probably would have gone.
I'll tell you one thing. I have never been to a WrestleMania in my entire life.
Really sorry to hear that. I went to my first a couple years ago, and there's nothing like it. And I'm going here in a few months to Tampa, so I'm excited.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. There were rumors that the Schmodown might find its way down there in Tampa in time for WrestleMania, and that we would get tickets to get in. But I don't know now if it's happening or not. So, I mean, I was lobbying Christian hard to take me with him because I was like, how could I not be in a match or have something to do with the Schmodown in Tampa when the
Yeah.
WrestleMania is happening? For God's sakes.
Yeah, you're not the only one that lobbied hard for that one too to get him to come down here because I mean it makes a lot of sense. Like if you're gonna have something structured, if you don't even know what the Schmodown is, you should probably Google it. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like if you have something that's that close and this big, like maybe you should try to work it out. But I bet it was next to impossible to try to work something out because venues
Yeah, I don't know.
they fill up quick around here around that time.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Everybody loves WrestleMania. It's one thing they look forward to, and the fan access and all that jam. And
Yeah.
speaking of WrestleMania, that is our match for today. You saw it in the title. That's what we're talking about here. As Aaron said, the once in a lifetime match between The Rock and John Cena. Aaron and I were kicking around some ideas for this episode, and we mentioned that Fast and Furious 9 trailer. The Fast 9 trailer came out, and we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to revisit this match because both of these guys are now officially in the Fast and the Furious franchise. Obviously, The Rock having been there since Fast 5 and, of course, spun off into Hobbs and Shaw. But Cena now coming in as Dom Toretto's brother. That's massive role to be getting for John Cena. But, of course, he's been building up for quite some time since Trainwreck, doing like these films like the voicing over Ferdinand, the Bull and Ferdinand.
Mm-hmm.
He's shown up in a number of films now. So this is like the next logical step for him to actually get a little bit of a rub in a franchise.
Yeah, and he was even in Doolittle as a polar bear. So
Right,
we don't
right.
need to talk too much about Doolittle. But yeah, man, John Cena, we'll talk about the promos and stuff and all that talk about The Rock leaving and going Hollywood. It seems as though John Cena's gone a little bit Hollywood, but he's
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of done it in a different way. He's still around. He still show up from time to time. He'll show up at WrestleMania and do a couple things, but for the most part, John Cena has quietly become a part-timer to almost like a quarter timer. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to look back at this too, Aaron, because I mean, this was a time when The Rock was like building and building as an actor in Hollywood. You know, he'd done The Tooth Fairy. He'd done I think he'd done the Fast Five film. I think, or he was still on the way to it. I
Yeah, he
guess.
was on the way there.
Yeah, so he'd done a few things. So he was still like kind of making his name. He'd slimmed down for Be Cool, but then started slowly putting the weight back on, the muscles back on for other roles. And Cena at this point had really taken center stage for quite some time. And the fans were starting to turn on Cena. This was like kind of a little bit before The Rock came back. The fans had been turning on Cena with the Cena sucks, Cena, let's go Cena, Cena sucks type chants were developing because people were turning on John Cena. I know I was one of those people that was never a big fan of John Cena as a wrestler. Seemed like a decent human being, good person. Certainly hear a lot of things about the stuff he does with Make-A-Wish Foundation. It's pretty incredible stuff that he does. But of course, you also heard about some of the other stuff that he did behind the scenes that wasn't so positive. I'm speaking of that wrestler that was hooked up with Miz. There was some issues going on there with that guy, and he kind of that happens in the back. That's how it goes sometimes. But this is a time when Cena is the alpha dog of the WWE, and The Rock is coming back as one of the former alpha dogs. And this is so ironic too, Aaron. One last point: it feels very much like Hogan coming back to challenge challenge The Rock at WrestleMania, The Rock being the up-and-comer or the primetime guy at that time. Now this is The Rock essentially filling into the Hogan slot for Cena, who's the prime-timer at that time.
Yeah, I believe it was Alex Riley that you were referring to in that. And
Yes,
yeah,
Alex Riley.
Alex Riley and The Miz, like, they were together at this time. But yeah, John Cena and The Rock, it does feel very Hogan Rock-esque. With all due respect to both guys, not even close. Not even close to that match.
Oh, sure.
In the vibe
Absolutely.
of that. But yeah, it's very similar in that structure that The Rock was once the guy on top. Then in came Hogan to come back and take the crown. Now John Cena's the guy on top. And then The Rock comes in to kind of I don't, John Cena didn't need a rub at this point, so I don't really know. We'll talk about it more because I got some big
Yeah.
thoughts on this this
Okay.
match itself. But do we want to start with the timeline?
Yeah.
Do we
Take
start
us
where
through
we
it.
began?
Let's do a timeline.
Okay, so we're gonna have to rewind the clock all the way back to 2008. It was a very minor thing, but it kind of got the ball rolling that there might be a little animosity, real animosity between The Rock and John Cena when The Rock inducted his father, the late Rocky Johnson, and the High Chief Peter Maivia into the Hall of Fame. He made a remark. He made a comment because we were, at war at the time, or when are we not at war anyway? But I digress. But The Rock had made a statement that the U.S. had been getting in trouble, and so was the WWE for their torture practices because they kept showing the Marine over and over and over the POWs, and that's kind of what got it started because John Cena in the crowd was just kind of like, "Ooh, you got me," and that really started the war of words between the two. But nothing really kind of happened right then and there. We had to wait a little bit. We had to wait a few months, actually a few years before we'd even see The Rock again. He comes back in 2011 as the host of WrestleMania 27. The Rock had not been around for 7 years. The last time we saw him was at WrestleMania 20 when he tagged with Mick Foley against Batista, Randy Orton, and Ric Flair in a losing effort. So we hadn't seen The Rock in a long time, and he comes back, and I mean, like you mentioned, the boy put on some bulk. He looked like a bodybuilder. He looked like The Rock, as only The Rock can look these days. So that's where it came back. Huge crowd response, probably one of the biggest crowd responses you ever heard, because nobody thought The Rock was going to come back to host WrestleMania.
Yeah.
It kind of seemed like The Rock was doing his own thing. So here he comes back. Were you excited to see him back?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought it was incredible because like I had heard the rumors. This was back at that time where I was reading all the dirt sheets. Our great friend Ryan Satin on the Pro Wrestling Sheet. There were so many of those back then that you could read, and at times you could like learn what was going to happen at Raw or WCW or any of these things ahead of time. To the sources say, rumors say, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, this predates Ryan's Pro Wrestling Sheet, I think. And so at that time, I'd heard rumors that he was going to be the the whatever, essentially the host of WrestleMania, whatever that plastic title means, but he was essentially going to be that. But there were rumors that it was going to be Stone Cold, or there was rumors there was going to be other people who were going to come in, or Hogan or somebody around that time. And so the way they did it, I think, is one of the best ways to introduce somebody, because that arena went dark, and then you saw lightning bolts, and then you heard the music, and that place, the roof flew off that place, and that reaction. I remember I yelled watching it, because you're right, we hadn't seen him in so long, and he was out there doing stuff in Hollywood, but all of us who loved him in the wrestling ring were anxious for him to come back at some point down the road, because everybody comes back, almost everybody comes back. So to have him be announced this way and cut a killer promo when he came out was just, I mean, literally when he says the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, that promo is exactly why he can lay claim to that self-named title.
You might be getting a text about kind of looping in the wrestling sheet with dirt sheets. I'm not saying. I'm just saying Ryan might get a little bit upset about that. So you may get a text later. But all I'm saying,
I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean like
I know what you meant. I know what you meant.
Yeah.
He takes it very seriously like that. But anyway, the Rock comes in, cuts a promo.
Yeah,
Who does he go through first? He goes for John Cena. He goes for the cutthroat. He says, "We went from Austin 316. If you smell what the Rock is cooking, to you can't see me." Can't see me. And then he proceeds to call John Cena. Says he comes out in his blue shirt, his purple shirt, his yellow shirt, his orange shirt. It looks like a big bowl of Fruity Pebbles. And then the crowd starts chanting Fruity Pebbles, and that became like the big thing. But the problem the problem was that The Rock and John Cena were not going to wrestle at
Right.
WrestleMania. That wasn't going to
Right.
happen because John Cena was embroiled in a feud with The Miz, who was the WWE champion at the time, which feels like it was 50 years ago because The
Yeah.
Miz back then, it was so weird. I don't know if you had this feeling going back and watching it, but it was so weird to see The Miz back then compared to the Miz that we have now because it's completely night and day different. Like I love the Miz so
Mhm.
much now. Back then I hated his guts, and I
Yeah.
feel like he's deserving of a championship run, and he's never gotten it since he's become like the good kind of Miz.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool to go back and watch him. But yeah, the War of the Words had already started. And unfortunately, going back to the Miz real quick, he is overshadowed
Yeah.
in this feud because it wasn't about the Miz being champion against John Cena. It was about John Cena and The Rock. Like, what's going to happen with John Cena and The Rock?
Right.
So I feel bad for Miz in that effort because you're the WWE champion, you're the top guy. It's not too dissimilar from the CM Punk thing and why CM Punk left. You know, he's
Mhm.
WWE champion, yet he's not the main event. The Rock and John Cena is the main event.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like, what are we doing here?
Well, and also that speaks to the what they felt about the Miz, and that's the honest truth, right?
It's
Look,
true.
the wrestling, professional wrestling, can be a very brutal, cutthroat business, and it will tell you where you are in the pecking order of things by the storylines you're involved in, right? And right now, at that time, the Miz wasn't seen as this really strong, unbeatable, champion. He was a guy who was champion and he was like winning by the skin of his teeth. And there were decent matches and good matches. Lord knows, it was pretty incredible to go from a reality competitor to end up holding the actual belt with that legacy and the lineage of that belt. He got there, and but the thing is, when you've got John Cena on the other side, I think they put The Rock into this mix to just kind of like make it not seem like, oh, another Cena victory, like everyone just assuming it was going to be another Cena victory. And I bet that the Cena Miz thing wasn't going to draw that kind of attention because,
Right.
as I said earlier, it was when the fans were turning on Cena. So maybe the WWE got jittery, got nervous, got a little scared, or maybe The Rock reached out and was like, hey, I'd like to come back. Is there some way you can work me back in? However it was that it came to be, I think it was a smart decision overall, business wise. It made sense for the business.
Yeah, definitely. But unfortunately for John Cena in this effort, he does lose to The Miz at
It does.
WrestleMania. That's funny to go back and look to see that
Yeah.
The Miz beat John Cena in the main event of a WrestleMania for the WWE Championship. John Cena eats a rock bottom from The Rock and a little bit of heel tactics, but The Miz does retain and beat
Mhm.
John Cena. He would lose it like a month later to John Cena, so it's not all gloom and doom for John Cena there. But we go to the next night on Raw, the aftermath. John Cena not very happy that The Rock got involved. The Rock comes out and says, hey, man, I know, I understand. So why don't we do this? 1 year from today, WrestleMania main event, John Cena and The Rock, once in a lifetime. So the first time that I can remember, somebody will correct me, I'm sure. This is the first time I can remember a WrestleMania match getting a year-long build.
Yeah. Yeah. A consciously year long build. Yeah,
Yes,
Aaron, I think you're absolutely right. There have been year long builds where they fight each other and whatever, and then
right.
eventually they settle it at WrestleMania. But this was something I'd never seen before. Not just the year long build, Aaron, but also scheduling a match a year from now is something I'd never seen before.
Yeah, The Rock's. I assume that The Rock was going back and doing movies. Is like, hey, I'm only available these times because he came in to do the WrestleMania thing and then he's out. And then John
Right.
Cena, of course, is going to go on to be champion and back and forth, whatever. But yeah, I remember. I remember thinking like, man, these guys are going to wrestle at Backlash. Like that kind of seems beneath them. And then when they were like, oh no, we're going to do it WrestleMania 1 year from today. 1 year from today, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. That's really interesting. What an
Yeah.
interesting way to do it. And of course, when you're rolling around, you're thinking in your brain, you know, September, October, like what's coming up? We're coming up on the Royal Rumble. What's the main event? Oh man, we got The Rock and John Cena already. So
Right.
what else could there possibly be? Anything else on this card is icing on the cake because we got these two generational superstars going at each other. So that was really, really awesome. But they do team up. John Cena and The Rock do team up at Survivor Series later that year in November. It is The Rock and John Cena. First time, last time, only time. They have so many good catchphrases for these Rock and John Cena moments. I don't know who came up with these, but they take on The Miz. Here he is again, and R-Truth, the
Yeah.
awesome Truth at the time. Shout out to R-Truth for being friggin' awesome. But you
R-Truth.
know, as it goes, The Rock gets the victory over, I believe it was R-Truth who he pinned, and they go on to win. And then John Cena eats yet another rock bottom at the end of Survivor Series. So that's two. So John Cena owes The Rock two at this point. And it feels like The Rock is playing more heel. But then again, it could be going back to what you said earlier about how the fans had turned on John Cena at this point. And they were chanting Cena sucks. So essentially, The Rock, no matter what he does to John Cena, is still the babyface over a John Cena that the fans don't like.
Well, this is the first time I think that we saw two baby faces, and at times you could argue two tweeners going at each other for the title. I'm sorry, going at each other, sorry, in the main event of a WrestleMania. I think this is the last time we saw this was WrestleMania 6 with the Warrior and Hogan. That was the last time that you saw two faces kind of going at it. Yeah, it was for the title back then. This isn't for the title, but still, it's the main event of WrestleMania. And also, I think your calculations are a bit wrong here on your math. Remember that the night before the night before or the week before WrestleMania, John Cena had delivered that F5 on, or not, but he'd done the whatever it is, the carry that he does. The attitude.
You're right.
He delivered that on The Rock, so it was 2-1 by the time Rock got that second.
You're right.
Round
Fair
bump.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're a Cena stan, but for God's sakes,
I don't know if I'm a stan, but I respect the man's game. Let's just put it that way. But okay, like the reason that we talked about doing this match back and forth was all the promo work that went into it, because man, there are some scathing ones. There's a good one with The Rock when he's in his house and he's by all of his championship belts and he's just ripping on Cena, calling him Grimace and all this other stuff going on, which is just amazing. But before we got on air, I was telling you about the one that I was watching where John Cena called out The Rock for having notes on his wrist.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most scathing promos that you'll ever see John Cena deliver. And I know you're a Rock guy. I get it. I
am.
The Rocha says, I get it. And I love The Rock too, and I love John Cena, but I think, and there's going to be people in the comments that are like, how dare you? I think John Cena got the better of The Rock in all of these promos. Every single one of them. I think John Cena bested The Rock. I know, isn't it insane? But if you go back and you watch it, you're just like, damn. Like The Rock went to a level, but John Cena just didn't care and topped him every single time.
Yeah, but see, I don't agree with you. I think The Rock got the better of him in just about every promo except for two of them. And it was the one right before they go and fight, and the one with the when he calls him out. Like, how do you recover from that? Because apparently that wasn't discussed before they went out there and did it. So The Rock, you can tell, was supremely
the look on his face is priceless. It's priceless.
Right, you don't do that. You don't undercut a guy who's coming back, who was a legend, who laid the groundwork for bringing the Attitude Era to life. You don't undercut a legend like that without telling him in front of the fans. That is such not done in wrestling, right? But The Rock and Cena, in retrospect, both said that we knew we had to walk all the way up to that line to where we were almost legitimately going to fight each other for real, for the fans to buy into this rivalry. And apparently backstage, there were almost fisticuffs a couple of times as well between these guys and how they were going to do their promos. So clearly two large egos slamming into each other, and Cena taking that cheap shot. I think it's a great promo, but I also think it's a massive cheap shot, because I'm sure The Rock could have said some personal shit about Cena. Hey, how's cheating on your wife going for you? And where are we going to go from there? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I mean. That's the danger of playing with fire like that. You never know what the other guy or girl is going to come back with.
Is it undercutting? Is it too far? Or is it gamesmanship? That's the question I would put forward to you, because I think The Rock kind of, even in the look on his face of like, oh, okay. I think The Rock respected it. I think because if you're gonna come for the king, you better come swinging. And John Cena came full bore swinging. So I think it was a little more gamesmanship than I think it was John Cena trying to get one over on The Rock. But
Mhm.
Quick comment about John Cena's infidelities. I mean, I don't endorse it at all. That's a terrible thing. I'm a married man. I would never endorse it. But if Mickey James comes a knocking, you answer the door. I'm just saying.
Well, that's
I'm
not. Yeah,
just saying.
you just don't have to let her in. That's
No,
you
you
can
do not
answer
have
the
to let her
door.
in. No, you can
Right. That's what
politely
I'm saying.
decline and say, I'll see you at work. But
But no, but you're right. You're right, Aaron. And I guess maybe that's going too far. Maybe The Rock could have said something about how Cena has someone write his promos for him. Like, could have been something that would have worked in the parameters with which they set up, and also which Cena kind of pushed out the boundaries of that parameters by calling him out, by putting those notes on his arm. He did call him out, and that so like The Rock could have responded another way that fits within that for sure. But I think Cena's always the middle parts of the promos were weak for me, whereas The Rock was always strong throughout his whole promos. Yeah, Cena would end his promos well, but everything getting there was that stuff that I always hate about Cena. Ooh, he's making fun of me. Ooh, I hate that is such a that is not the that is so like childlike in your promo like approach. Yes, would he get occasional shots at The Rock that were great? Absolutely. And I thought legitimately him that old trope of him fighting for the guys in the back, for the legitimacy of wrestlers who are still here. We saw Roman Reigns doing that a few years ago, right?
yeah,
Same kind of stuff. Rollins has come out and spoken about how much he hates the fact that the older wrestlers come back for WrestleMania or the bigger events because it gets in the way of guys who are currently or girls who are currently fighting in storylines from getting those top spots at a WrestleMania. So it's all understandable. This is age-old stuff, though, that happens all the time. And then when Rollins is Hogan or Reigns is The Rock coming back, then it's okay. So it's just like it's weird how it's always the circle of life of wrestling, right? You start out one place, then you feel exactly like they feel, then you feel, and then you get more perspective as your vision gets broader about the whole thing, and everything just changes. But
yeah.
this is just great. I mean, Aaron, you're right. Both of these guys took their promo games to the next level, and it's subjective. Like you're a fan of the Cena winning this thing. I believe The Rock won this thing overall while giving credit to Cena for getting some really good shots in. But it was so close. It's like one of those fights where it's a bit of a draw before the actual wrestling happens.
One is Papa Doc, and one is whoever Eminem's character was in 8 Mile. I'll just call him Slim. I don't know. Oh, B Rabbit. I
B
apologize.
Rabbit.
It's
Yeah.
B Rabbit and Papa Doc going at it. So
Mm.
there's an old reference for you. But the funny thing, man, I got to mention this John Cena promo because it always sticks in my mind. Remember when he had that brief feud with Kevin Federline, of all people?
Oh God. Yeah.
For those of you that don't remember, Kevin Federline was Britney Spears' backup dancer, and then they started dating and got married or something, and they have kids
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And he and John Cena had a brief thing, and John Cena absolutely destroyed Kevin Federline and
Of
said that
course.
if my name was Kayfabe, I'd be spearing Britney, which was probably the best thing I'd ever heard in my entire life. And how good is that? Like,
Yeah, yeah. No,
that's
I'll never deny that.
amazing.
Yeah, I'll never deny that Cena has gotten his shots in over the years that were great. I'll never deny that. I'll never deny that. Yeah, some of interesting
so
shots he's
good.
gotten in over the. But you know what's funny too is when you heard Rock's promo, his initial promo about him. You come out here wearing these bright shirts and blight shirts and the "You Can't See Me" stuff, and then you remember how Rocky Maivia came out with those bright blue colors and the
The
things. And
pineapple
so
hair.
yeah, all of it just is so funny to see the irony of both of these guys and kind of what happens as the road gets longer between them. How Cena now is the guy who's left the WWE to focus more on movies and whatever, and occasionally comes back. You know, like you mentioned earlier, Aaron. So it's just funny how this whole thing, when you look at it, really worked for the time that it was happening. But down the road, in retrospect, you realize that a lot of these complaints Cena was going to do himself. And it's about being like, well, I'm mad that you're getting to do this, so I'm going to undercut you this way. But then when the opportunities open up for me, maybe I will explore that. Maybe that wouldn't be a bad idea. So, those kinds of things.
I think the reason that these two match up so well is because they are, in some degrees, mirrors of each other. I mean, John Cena was on top for a while, and he needed somebody to boost him, so he had Edge. And then The Rock had Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, Undertaker, had these guys to build him up. And then John Cena eventually
Foley,
was the
yeah.
champion. The Rock eventually became the champion. You know, kind of really the locker room leader and the guy that was on top of the whole company, the face of the company. I mean, The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, you could argue 1A, 1B of the WWE for a long time. John Cena was #1 for about 15 years. So
Yeah.
it's just very similar. And now we're starting to see the similarities in the Hollywood structure with the Fast and the Furious movies being their
Mhm.
crossover point, which is kind of interesting and fun considering we're on 9 Fast and the Furious movies. I've enjoyed quite a bit of them, but here we are anyway.
I wonder if we're gonna get, because there's been no confirmation that The Rock is either in or out of Fast Nine. Wouldn't it be something to get this WrestleMania 28, WrestleMania 29 is in essence
The
a
third
rubber
time in a
match?
lifetime.
Yeah, a third time in a lifetime rubber match between Dom Toretto's brother, aka John Cena, and Luke Hobbs, aka The Rock. Wouldn't that be interesting to see those guys going at it on screen one more time in another staged fight or scheduled
I
fight?
forget who John Cena, I forget his character name in Fast Nine, but it's like something like stupid. It's like Frank or something, but it's like this is
Yeah,
Dominic Toretto's brother, Frank. It's like Frank.
Frank
Is
Toretto.
this an adopted brother? I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand where this came from. But anyway, we're here. We're talking about it. WrestleMania 28, once in a lifetime. You heard me do the
Yeah.
wonderful Flow Rida impression at the beginning of the show. Miami, Florida. The Rock's home away from home. John Cena versus The Rock. I'll let you go first. Give me your overall thoughts on this match, and I'll tell you what I thought afterwards.
Well, I will say this. It was a little bit of a letdown. I thought this match was going to, like melt the paint off the walls and blow the roof. Well, I guess it was an open air room stadium, but I thought they was going to tear the stadium down. Because I'll tell you this, the Rock Hogan match, technically not one of the greatest matches you're ever
No.
going to see, but the electricity, the energy of the fans are what elevated that match. The fans were as essential to that match as The Rock and Hogan were. When you're watching it, you can't help but get caught up. With this one, because Toronto felt like they were on top of the ring. Miami was more expansive, that stadium, so it felt like you were watching this
Yeah.
match most of the time rather than feeling like you're in the match, actually in the ring. You know what I'm saying? And so
It's a big
for me,
difference.
yeah, it is a massive difference when you're watching it. And for me, overall, I thought it was a good match. I did not think it was a great match. And the result, I enjoyed the result. But when you hear about what happened, and I want to make sure I get this right, I don't know if I have it up for, I have it somewhere. What happened to The Rock getting injured 25 minutes into the match? He suffered multiple injuries throughout the match. The match was supposed to go 50 minutes. And at minute 25 is when he tore some rectal muscle and then eventually had a triple hernia or something like that.
You
Here,
meant
I want to get it right.
pectoral, not rectal?
Oh no, I got it. Let
You
me see
said
if I can find
rectal?
it.
He pulled
Hold
his
on.
asshole?
Hold on. I know I've got it here somewhere, I think.
I think you're talking
Well,
about the
I'll look it up
second.
here.
I think
You
you're
keep
talking about
talking.
the second match because I believe The Rock
Oh,
tore
was
his
it the
pec
second match
in
we
the
got hurt?
second in the rematch. Yeah,
Hold on.
yeah, I think that's what happened. If I'm
No,
not
no, I'm
mistaken.
telling.
But while you're
You
looking
give
that
me
up,
your thoughts.
oh my
Yeah.
god, whole thing sucked pretty much.
Oh,
Didn't
wow.
like it. Didn't like it. Didn't like what was going on. And this is gonna make me sound like such a hypocrite, so please bear with me, folks. The Rock is so bulky in this match, and that he
Yeah.
hasn't, yeah, he wrestled at Survivor Series for like 20 minutes, but it's not like it's a big difference going into WrestleMania in
Yeah.
an open air hot Miami in the hot Miami air. I'm sure he's been there before, but it's a little bit different when you haven't been consistently in the ring like John Cena has for, the past 8 or 9 years, and you're just coming back after 7 off. And I think that showed a lot in what The Rock was doing because, of course, he's in amazing shape and he did some cool stuff.
Yeah.
But man, like the second they locked up and The Rock like got thrown, I was like, oh my god, he's already blown up. And it's just it kind of made its way throughout the match that both guys eventually at one point got severely like blown up, like they were gone. And I get
Yeah.
it. I'm not someone that's in shape right now. I realize it's very hypocritical for me to talk about that stuff. Whatever, leave me alone. But I'm just
Right.
saying, like, it's so different to see a guy like these, like John Cena versus Edge is a different dynamic because Edge is the guy you're going to throw around the ring. He's going to do all the bumping for you. In this one,
Right.
you've got two guys that are not used to, being the ones that are flying all over the ring. And when they have to, they're going to lose stamina. It's just going to
Yeah.
happen, especially with two guys like this that are big, muscular dudes. And that really hampered the match for me. And I think the result
Hmm.
was dead wrong. I think remember watching it and
Wow.
getting so pissed that The Rock beat John Cena because The Rock isn't there. John Cena's
Yeah.
there. And I think it would have behooved the WWE to have The Rock do the favor for John Cena. And I just didn't understand it. Like, this isn't that long ago, so I'm a smarter wrestling fan than I was,
Mm-hmm.
before this. And I'm just, even as a younger fan, I'm like, no, that's wrong. This is the wrong way to go, because
Mm-hmm.
the Rock's not going to be here tomorrow, and John Cena is. And yeah,
Right.
they do the rematch and all that stuff. I mean, we could talk about that if you want, but it's just, it felt wrong to me.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
It couldn't have felt more right to me, because the fans, like I said, had been turning on Cena. It's Miami. It's The Rock. It's not for the title. If this had been for the title, then that's a whole nother ballgame. Because I know a lot of people now, in retrospect, get upset that Hogan beat Triple H for that title, thanks to the Undertaker's interference, because you knew Hogan wasn't going to be like carrying that title for a while. This kind of situation is just a match. It's not a match for the title. It's a match for bragging rights and whatever. And so the match happens. And I didn't mind that The Rock won. I actually loved it that The Rock won in Miami. And kudos to Cena for being willing to put him over, because this also kind of elevates Cena. Maybe you can hear me out a little bit on this one, Aaron. I think the reason they did this is because Cena had been the fans were turning on Cena to turn him into the sympathetic character who got beat trying to achieve a dream, an underdog dream to defeat The Rock at WrestleMania, and to lose. The fans maybe could see a vulnerability to Cena that they could connect to and kind of cheer for him again as an underdog now, trying to fight back to redeem himself and prove that he can do it, and then beat The Rock at WrestleMania 29. So I think that might have been the logic behind it. Maybe they knew ahead of time that they were going to try and do this twice, or see what the fans' reaction was and kind of keep this possibility of WrestleMania 29 in their back pocket. So they went ahead with this. And I do want to correct myself. The Rock did get injured in the second match a lot more severely than he did in the first match. But he did get injured in the first
Okay.
match when John Cena came off the top rope and did that leg drop on The
Oh,
Rock.
right.
When The Rock hit his neck, he tore his right hamstring in that moment.
Wow.
Which
Okay,
is
I didn't
why,
realize that.
yeah, which is why you see in the last few minutes of the match, The Rock isn't as strong in delivering the move. So the ending of the match feels a little anticlimactic, because Cena is all over The Rock, and then The Rock just jumps up, delivers a rock bottom, and then it's over. And so that's kind of what happened there. So you're right. The second match and that's what I meant by the rectal. It was like the hamstring near the ass. So it's the hamstring's near the butt. Last I checked. So that's what I meant. And with the 29 matches where he tore the abdominal muscles and the pectoral muscles and all that. But yeah,
I hear you.
so clearly The Rock should not be wrestling, is what the point.
I'm gonna walk with you on that one. I'm going to agree with you that I think what you're getting at is your logic is that if The Rock doesn't beat John Cena, then the crowd still turns on John Cena, and we have unhappy
even
people
more
at
so.
WrestleMania,
Even
which is the
more
last thing that anybody wants.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna walk with you on that one. But something else you said before that made me not want to, because you said
Okay.
that John Cena, John Cena putting over The Rock. Like, do you realize like what you just said there? Like, why does why does anybody need to put The Rock over? The Rock is on the moon.
You're right. And my point is that I give kudos to Cena for agreeing to that ending, for going along with that storyline, because he doesn't have to. And we talked about this in the Stone Cold history with Bret Hart, how Shawn Michaels didn't want to job out to Bret Hart to give him the title. So Cena could have easily, at that time, with his stature, could have been like, no, I'm not doing this program with him unless I win in the first match. So he could have pushed, but that's not Cena. Cena's a company man. But he could have done that. He could have big time The Rock or whatever. So I give him credit for being willing to take that loss and go through that year-long journey. And anything could have happened, Aaron. He could have gotten hurt. The Rock could have gotten hurt for real doing his action movies. That's what's so crazy about both of these matches, 28 and 29. Both of these guys stayed relatively healthy up until they fought each other, and The Rock was the one who took injuries in both of these matches, but they stayed relatively healthy until they fought each other. Anything could have happened. Broken legs. We've seen Sid Vicious break that ankle. We've seen all kinds of injuries happen in the wrestling ring. So they were both tempting fate to get both of these matches done on back-to-back WrestleManias. And kudos to them and to the injury gods that they didn't suffer anything severe that would have affected the booking on both of these matches, because they're good bookends for both of these guys and the drama that they encountered and the real life drama that they had between each other. You know, there was legitimate beef going on between these guys, and sometimes, and you know this as a man, Aaron, and I'm sure this happens. I'm sure this happens regardless of gender. I want to clarify that, but you know this, like my experience as a man. Sometimes the people you fight with the most, by the time you're done with that fight, you actually respect them afterwards for having gone through it, and you find a kinship or a friendship or a connection. It doesn't have to be best friends, but certainly a connection. And that The Rock and Cena have both spoken about how they gained or found newfound respect for each other after this whole program was done.
For sure. That's why they shake hands after a UFC fight most of the time, because they respect each other. They respect the gamesmanship. They're there for that reason, that camaraderie. And I think after this particular match and after all this storyline was over, The Rock and John Cena were thick as thieves. John Cena even came out and helped The Rock on a couple of occasions. So I'm sure that maybe The Rock even maybe put a little nudge into the Fast and Furious producers, like, hey, look at my boy John, like, look what he's doing. I'm not saying that's what happened, because John Cena could get that job on his own merit, but I'm just saying, like, it probably doesn't hurt to have The Rock in your corner.
And I'm sure The Rock gave him great advice as he was coming into Hollywood as well.
Well, the good thing about that, like you were talking about, the fans turning on John Cena. The aftermath of this match actually led to a pretty fun storyline where John Cena was on a losing streak.
Yeah.
He just lost to everybody, and you never seen that before, because, the era of Super Cena, and John Cena wins every match. And then he started losing, and it was kind of cool to see him reduced to, like, he's Clark Kent now. He's not Superman, he's Clark Kent. So I guess you're right in that respect, so I'll give you that. But yeah, once in a lifetime turned into twice in a lifetime, as The Rock ended up beating CM Punk for the WWE Championship at Royal Rumble the next year. John Cena won the Royal Rumble, so here we are, twice in a lifetime, at WrestleMania 29, where John Cena got his revenge and beat The Rock, becoming the WWE Champion.
Yeah.
Better the less said about that match, the better, as, not another good one. The Rock did get hurt, like you said, toward them, the pectoral muscle and his asshole, apparently. But
No.
But abdominal, right. And I remember The Rock after that saying, like, they were asking him, like, are you going to wrestle again, or like, what's the future? And The Rock was like, I'm kind of starting to think that maybe retirement was a good idea from the wrestling ring, because I don't come in here and get torn up like I used to. You got stunt people for that now. Like, I got stunt people for that. So I don't know if he was playing coy or he really was like, nah, this isn't for me anymore, because it's one thing for being a super muscular, bulky bodybuilder type guy than being someone that's in between the ropes, going to, Cleveland, and then jumping on a plane and going to Wichita the next day. It's a little bit different than I think what people realize.
Yeah.
But, both of these guys are legends, of course. They're not, neither one are in the Hall of Fame yet, but it's only a matter of time. Sure. The Rock has gone on to be the biggest actor in Hollywood. John Cena's on his way. You mentioned it, Trainwreck, Blockers, Fast and Furious 9. John Cena
Bumblebee,
yeah, of course. Yeah. John Cena's getting to be just he's not quite to that level, but he's getting to be quite the big star of his own. So I kind of want to ask you, if these two had met 5 years earlier, is it an even bigger fight? Or did we need The Rock to have that time off and John Cena to be the guy? I think we would have got a better match, but I don't know if we would have got a better storyline, if that makes sense.
It's a great question you ask. I mean, I think Cena is nowhere near as I think he's not the powerhouse he is 5 years before this match. Okay. I think The Rock coming back only 2 years after he's gone wouldn't have had, or 3 years after he's gone, I don't think would have had the same explosive power as The Rock coming back after all that time of people missing him. So I think the timing was absolutely perfect. The one match that I wish that you could go back in time would be the Rock and Hogan match. If that
Yes.
had happened 5 years earlier, that would have been an incredible match. Not that I don't like what we got, but 5 years before, that match would have been insane. But these guys at this time, I think, was the right time for them to come together. Now, do you want The Rock in his prime versus Cena in his prime? Absolutely. That would be a fun match. That would tear down. That's a 50-minute match. Easy. Easy. That's a steel cage match that you could do that could last you for an hour. That would be incredible. But we got what we got. And unfortunately, I don't think their chemistry, because here's the deal. And Aaron, you know this. We both know this as fan. I'm sure our people listening or watching us know this. Wrestlers that are limited with their technical abilities don't necessarily deliver the greatest matches when they come for each other. Now, a street fight notwithstanding, or cage match notwithstanding, when you see an actual technical wrestling fight match, you got guys who are used to just doing big spots. It's rare when you see them come together and actually deliver a fantastic long match between each other that becomes legendary.
It's a special talent to be someone that can have a great match with anybody. I look at somebody
Yeah.
like Dolph Ziggler currently, if you want somebody like that. Shawn Michaels, of course, duh.
Yes.
Shawn Michaels got to have a great match with a broomstick. Ric Flair, same way. Steamboat, same way. Pardon me. Notice that most of the people I mentioned are Hall of Famers. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right in that respect. Technically, they are limited. John Cena and his 5 moves of doom, which is he expanded on that, but it is difficult, like I said
Yeah.
earlier, to have like these like Hogan and Warrior. Like, look at that. It's not technically sound either. It's just two big behemoths
No.
like running into each other. It's like Godzilla and King Kong. Godzilla
Right.
and King Kong ain't doing no head scissors, man. They're punching each other in the face. That's
Mm-hmm.
what's gonna happen. So in that respect, it is more difficult to make a match like that appealing,
Yeah.
especially to an audience that's grown up with the sport and they see people like Shawn Michaels at this time. Shawn Michaels is retired, but to see people like that, Edge and stuff like that, having these amazing matches in this WrestleMania, Triple H and the Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell. I mean, come on, like unbelievable
Well,
chemistry between those guys.
yeah, and that's the one guy that I think, ironically, out of the Attitude Era, I think Triple H is the best wrestler overall, in my opinion, for character, for delivering the big spots, and being able to technically wrestle with anybody. He is such a student of the game, literally what they call him, the cerebral assassin, because he is the game. The game implies all of it, the entire package, and
Right.
he was always that. So for me, I mean, Stone Cold was a great wrestler as well, but Stone Cold's the same thing. You're chopping it down, the thing, the stunner, all those kinds of things. You'd never argue that Stone Cold could wrestle a fantastically technical match.
Right.
Triple H, every single time, as a big dude, he could deliver great technical matches combined with big spots. That's why his matches were always a must watch for me. And this match, ironically, this is the match that stole the night overall. If you're a purist of wrestling, was the Undertaker Triple H match. That match was phenomenal for all the drama and the Shawn Michaels will he or won't he, which
Yeah.
side is he on, and having and then all of them carrying each other out of the ring as well, which was a great kind of breaking kayfabe moment where there's no sides. All 3 men are respected for the war they just went through.
Yeah, it's a nice little wink. We'll probably cover that on.
Yes.
I imagine we'll cover that on a future episode. Can't
Oh
say enough
yeah.
about those 2 matches that Triple H and Undertaker had back to back. So, yeah. But I mean, I think overall, John Cena, The Rock, once in a lifetime, better story than execution in the
Mm,
wrestling sense. It's
yeah.
kind of like seeing, it's like seeing the Suicide Squad trailer, and then you're like, wow, this is great. And then you go see the Suicide Squad movie, and you're like, wow, this sucks. It's kind of like that.
I won't say that it sucks. I thought the
It's
match is certainly
not good.
watchable match, but yeah, some of the moments are nice, some of the moments are cool, but certainly you could tell they didn't have the greatest chemistry together, and that kind of bears out. I mean, if fans wanted us to go beat by beat through the match, I don't think in the end it would have been as it would have been an enjoyable experience, in my opinion.
That's fair enough. That's
Yeah,
fair enough.
but there were some good moments and some good spots. But overall, a match that just is better memorable for the result rather than the actual match.
Yes, exactly. If you
Yeah.
want to talk about two guys that do have some chemistry, that's Kurt Hennig and Nick Bockwinkel.
Yeah.
And if you don't know who I'm talking about, Kurt Hennig, better known as Mr. Perfect, and you have Nick Bockwinkel, one of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time, one of the best talkers of all time as well. You see a lot of Ric Flair-esque talking from Nick Bockwinkel, very
Hmm.
slow, plodding, talking. Chris Jericho, when he came back and was wearing the suits and stuff like that, he took a lot from Nick Bockwinkel. You'll see that. So I
Yeah.
think in honor of Mr. Perfect, who passed away, I believe it was about 7 years ago, bow down.
Okay.
I'm a huge Mr. Perfect fan. I
Hmm.
think in honor of Mr. Perfect, we need to talk about him winning the AWA title from Nick Bockwinkel from Super Clash 2. So we're going
Yeah.
all the way back. You guys have been saying, hey, man, talk about more things. My voice is leaving. Talk about more things than WWE. And now you're going to get it next week. AWA action. Kurt Hennig versus Nick Bockwinkel from Super Clash 2 is
Yeah, I
what's
can't
going
wait.
down next week.
I can't wait to watch the. These are. It's so great to go back and revisit these matches and see what's going on because you see the legacy of professional wrestling and why it's held on for so long and why it works generation to generation, decade to decade. The stars of those decades, why they worked in that particular decade, what they did that was different than what anybody else was doing and stayed in people's minds. Certainly, Nick Bockwinkel is a guy that kind of gets lost at times when you're talking about the greats. Bockwinkel is someone that needs to get brought up more and more. So this idea of revisiting one of his matches with Mr. Perfect, the great Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, is one I'm looking forward to like crazy to discuss with you, man.
Yeah, if you absolutely, and if you want to talk about the origins of Hulkamania and Hulk Hogan, it was Nick Bockwinkel putting on a clinic with Hulk Hogan in the AWA that helped him get noticed
Yep.
by Vince McMahon. So you have a lot to think. If you're a big Hogan fan, you have Nick Bockwinkel to think in a large part of getting Iron Sheik as well, but a lot in getting Hulk Hogan to be the Hulk Hogan that we know him. So
Yeah.
hopefully, we're going to go back in time. I was 1 year old when this match happened, so we're going to go back in time. People are going to see Mr. Perfect before he was perfect, and we're going to get
Yeah.
to see a great wrestler, Nick Bockwinkel. So yeah, I'm super excited to talk about it with you.
Absolutely. Well, this was an episode we discussed once in a lifetime. The Rock versus John Cena there, WrestleMania 28. A year-long build-up to this, or just a little bit over a year-long build-up. If you include that Raw and the Hall of Fame speech between these two guys. Legitimate beef, legitimate backstage issues with each other, leading up to this fantastic match. Some of the best promo work. You could argue some of the best promo work between two wrestlers ever that blurred the line between reality and fiction, leading up to a match that maybe didn't live up to the hype, but certainly the result was what you enjoyed coming out of this. At least for me as a Rock fan, I enjoyed it overall. And then what it led to for Cena, I think, was a great second wind for his career
Definitely.
overall. People started to kind of appreciate what Cena had done as a lifer. So by the time Cena left, there was a lot of love and respect for Cena before he took off to go do more of the Hollywood stuff. So that's what you see here. You got two great wrestlers who become Hollywood stars in their own right as they move on past the WWE. Both of these guys still come back to visit the WWE and do little things with them in their career. So it's great stuff to discuss here. So, all right, Aaron Turner, thank you so much for joining me, my brother. Where can people find you, my man?
You could find me on Twitter at only Aaron Turner. We'll be talking, probably talking some NXT in the next couple of days. So yeah, check out my Twitter for that. I got a lot of thoughts on that. I'm sure I haven't watched it yet because it's not the present or future. So yeah, in the future I'll probably be talking about it.
Yeah, we might do an NXT takeover, just kind of quick reaction for about 30 minutes as an extra bonus content on this particular feed on the channel. If we both watch in time, we can find time to hook up and talk about it for half an hour. Definitely gonna do that with the NXT takeover that's happening today as we're recording it, tonight as we're recording this particular episode. So thanks to all of you all who have been sending your comments and giving us likes and giving us views on this show. This is one of my favorite shows to do on the Outlaw Nation channel because I never want to lose my connection to professional wrestling, and Aaron Turner helps me do that as a historian of professional wrestling. So next week, looking forward to it. Kurt Hennig versus Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA title. It's going to be a lot of fun to discuss all that. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to like and share this episode, retweet it, put an Instagram post on it, whatever you want to
Please.
do. Tell your friends about it. We're going to keep doing this show for a long time because we love going back to look at these matches, and there are plenty of matches for us to cover and discuss. So if you can pass this on to other people and get people hooked up onto Strong Style, we'd very much appreciate. You can find me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. See all the things I'm doing. And if you haven't hit subscribe on this channel yet, this YouTube channel, please hit subscribe there. I'm trying to get to 12,000. I'm trying to get to 20,000 down the road here. So any help from you would be most appreciated. And Aaron, do you have a YouTube or anything like that people can go and see anything you're doing?
I don't have a YouTube yet, but I'm working on it for something completely different. But yeah, somewhere down the road, sure.
Awesome. All right, well, there you go. Best man in the business, best co-host in the business for this pro wrestling world, Aaron Turner. I'm John Rocha, the Outlaw. We'll talk to you next time on another episode of Strong Style.